is a bust that has been gazing at the world for 100 years without blinking. It stands in Berlin. It is 50 centimeters tall and weighs 20 kilos. And it remains the most photographed female face of all antiquity. She was called Nefertiti, the beautiful one who has come, and her image survived 3,000 years of dust, wars, and deliberate neglect. But there is something that bust does not show. In 1912, the German Egyptologist Ludwig Borchardt found it buried beneath the floor of a sculptor's workshop in Amarna. He declared it to the Egyptian authorities at a deliberately lower value than its actual worth, packed it in wooden crates, and shipped it to Berlin. Egypt never saw it again. And for 11 whole years, no one outside Germany knew that the object existed. The German government kept it secret until 1923, when the war was over and it was too late for Egypt to protest. The same sculptor who immortalized her erased her true face under layers of plaster. The same state that safeguarded her image hid it for 11 years. And the same priesthood that lived in her shadow spent the rest of the next generation erasing her name from 140 monuments. This is not the story of a queen who disappeared. It is the story of a queen who was erased, and of the system that still protects that secret today. If the mysteries the official world prefers not to talk about pique your curiosity, stay until the end. What you're about to hear doesn't end where you think it does. The 12th year of Akhenaten's reign. That is the last time Nefertiti's name appears with certainty in the official records of the empire. There is no death decree. No funerary inscription. No prepared tomb. No order of mourning. No scribe from Egypt's vast bureaucratic apparatus recorded what happened to the woman who had been co-ruler, high priestess of the Aten cult, and, according to several Amarna period inscriptions, co-regent with full royal attributes. In 18th dynasty Egypt, where every detail of royal life and death was regulated, documented, and carved in stone with obsessive precision, Nefertiti's disappearance is not a mystery. It is a document in itself. Because in that Egypt, disappearing from the records didn't happen accidentally to a queen. It required a decision. It required people with access to the temples. It required a collective silence that only a powerful institution can maintain. Nefertiti was between 30 and 40 years old when it happened. She had survived the death of at least one of her 6 daughters. She had seen the city of Amarna, that utopian capital her husband built from scratch in the desert for the god Aten, begin to fracture from within. And then, without a preserved explanation, without a located tomb, and without a recorded cause of death, she disappears from the historical record. What did remain was what shouldn't have survived, an unnamed mummy in an unmarked tomb, with cranial injuries that forensic experts described as inconsistent with the passage of time. A desperate letter written by his own daughter to the king of a foreign country, pleading for protection. And a bust left behind in an abandoned workshop, as if someone had been in a hurry to leave Amarna and couldn't take everything with them. Each of those 3 surviving objects tells the same kind of story. A story of someone who was eliminated, not forgotten. To understand the magnitude of what was lost, one must understand who Nefertiti was before the year 12. She was not a decorative queen. She was the functional half of a shared power unprecedented in Egyptian history. The inscriptions in the private tombs at Amarna do not contain prayers solely to the pharaoh, they contain prayers to Akhenaten and Nefertiti in that order, as a divine couple through whom the god Aten communicated with mortals. In ancient Egypt, that was not rhetoric. It was the structure of government. Images from the Amarna period show her doing something no previous queen had done, striking enemies with the war mace, a position reserved exclusively for the pharaoh. She made direct offerings to Aten without male mediation. She presided over high-ranking ceremonies in which Akhenaten did not appear. The philologist Alan Gardiner, one of the most rigorous grammarians of ancient Egyptian in the 20th century, noted that toward the end of Akhenaten's reign, Nefertiti's name began to appear on some reliefs with royal male epithets that had never before been applied to a woman who was not the declared pharaoh. That wasn't a scribal error. There were no errors of that kind in stone inscriptions in Egypt. She was probably born between 1370 and 1360 BC. Her origins are debated. Some researchers believe she was the daughter of I, the nobleman who eventually succeeded Tutankamón. Others maintain that she came from an unidentified family with diplomatic connections. What is documented is that she entered the palace as great royal wife and that in less than a decade she became the most visible religious figure in the empire. There were powerful women in Egypt. Hatshepsut ruled as pharaoh. Tai wielded unprecedented diplomatic influence. But Nefertiti was different. She exercised religious and political power simultaneously, during her husband's lifetime, without resorting to disguise or subterfuge. She had 6 daughters. Their names were inscribed on walls from the delta to the first cataract of the Nile. Today, 4 of those daughters have disappeared from the historical record with no known grave and no confirmed cause of death. It's not a coincidence. It's methodology. This is where the official story begins to show visible cracks. The priesthood of Ammonius, the most powerful clergy in Egypt before Akhenaten's religious revolution, had been displaced, dispossessed, and publicly humiliated. Their temples were closed by decree. Their funds were confiscated and redistributed to the cult of Aten. Their gods were declared non-existent. During the 17 years of Akhenaten's reign, they endured this dispossession in silence, but with an intact institutional memory. When Akhenaten died, around 1336 BC, the priesthood returned. Not suddenly or chaotically, but methodically, through a child pharaoh of about 9 years old, Tutankamón. As the boy signed the decrees restoring the cult of Ammonius, the priests reclaimed the temples, the funds, and ideological control of the state. Akhenaten's name began to be erased from monuments, publicly, with a hammer, as a visible sign of punishment. Nefertiti's name also began to disappear, but in a different way. That difference is what no Spanish-language channel has analyzed carefully enough. The erasure of Akhenaten was noisy, documented, almost theatrical. His cartouches were hammered into visible locations so that everyone could see that the heretic had been erased. The erasure of Nefertiti, on the other hand, was silent. Her inscriptions were not destroyed as a sign of public punishment. They simply ceased to be maintained, ceased to be reproduced in new constructions, ceased to be referenced. As if someone had ordered that her name simply cease to circulate, without announcement, without a signed decree. The technical term for this is damnatio memoriae, condemnation of memory. In Rome, it was a formal act of the Senate. What was done to Nefertiti has no known official decree. It was an unsigned erasure, carried out by an institution that knew what it was doing and preferred that no one know who ordered it. Archaeologist Chris Naunton of the Egypt Exploration Society observed that some inscriptions that should have included Nefertiti's name simply left the space blank. It wasn't filled with another name. It wasn't covered with another cartouche. It was deliberately left empty. Someone ordered that that space remain empty. And that intentional emptiness, in a civilization that was terrified of emptiness, is the most disturbing evidence of all. All we've seen so far are the symptoms. The question no one has answered is different: what happened to the body? Because somewhere in the Valley of the Kings, or beneath its sands, there's an answer that's been waiting for 3,000 years. In 1817, the Italian explorer Giovanni Belzoni opened an unmarked tomb in the Valley of the Kings. It was recorded as KV-21. Inside, they found 2 female mummies with no inscriptions, no jewelry, and no texts from the Book of the Dead. They catalogued them, labeled them, and stored them away. For almost 2 centuries, no one knew what to do with them. In 2010, a study published in the Journal of the American Medical Association, JAMA, analyzed the DNA of the Amarna royal family. It was the most ambitious genetic project ever undertaken on Egyptian mummies, coordinated by Zahi Hawass with support from international laboratories. The results redrew the entire family tree. The mummy known as the Younger Lady, found in tomb KV-35 in 1898, turned out to be the daughter of Amenhotep III and Queen Tai, a full sister of Akhenaten and the biological mother of Tutankhamun. This ruled out Nefertiti as the Younger Lady, but left the 2 mummies from KV-21 unidentified. It was then that Hawass focused his attention on KV-21A and KV-21B. In September 2022, a new season of excavations began in the eastern part of the Valley of the Kings. Weeks later, at a conference in Luxor, it was announced that the CT scan results for KV-21B had been obtained. The estimated age of the body was consistent with that of Nefertiti at the time of her disappearance. And the mitochondrial haplogroup, the genetic marker that is passed down unchanged from mother to child for generations, was consistent with Tutankhamun's profile. Hawa set a date for the official announcement, November 4, 2022, exactly on the centenary of the discovery of Tutankhamun's tomb. The Howard Carter Hotel in Luxor. That date came and went. There was no announcement. Genetic material is very difficult to obtain. That's the only reason we've chosen to postpone the project, Hawa stated weeks later in an interview with the newspaper El Español. Extracting DNA from such degraded tissue remains the main technical obstacle. In January 2026, Hawa spoke again. He is now excavating in the Eastern Valley, in an area near Hatshepsut's tomb. It is my hope that this could be Nefertiti's tomb. This discovery could happen soon, he declared. There is no confirmation. But neither is the excavation abandoned. While the search continued underground, another parallel investigation was looking in a completely different direction. In 2015, Egyptologist Nicholas Reeves, an 18th dynasty specialist and National Geographic Fellow, published a detailed analysis of the ultra-high-resolution scans that the Spanish company Factum Arte had performed on the walls of Tutankhamun's tomb, KV62. What Reeves found wasn't on the floor or ceiling of the burial chamber. It was in the cracks. Reeves identified broken lines on the north and west walls of the burial chamber that, according to his structural analysis, were not natural cracks from the aging of the rock. They were the outlines of two walled-up and repainted doorways. His argument was accurate. Tomb KV62 is too small, too irregular, and too hastily constructed to have originally been built for a pharaoh. The corridor axes do not conform to the standards of male royal tombs of the period. The wall decoration was executed with unusual speed, visible in the uneven quality of the brushstrokes. Reeves proposed that the tomb had been adapted at the last minute for Tutankhamun, who died young and unexpectedly around the age of 19, and that the original structure belonged to a pre-existing queen's tomb, that of Nefertiti. The Egyptian government authorized 3 rounds of ground-penetrating radar, GPR, scanning between 2015 and 2018. The first team, Japanese, detected anomalies consistent with empty spaces behind walls. The second, Italian, did not confirm them. The third, the most methodologically rigorous, was coordinated by Dr. Franco Porcelli of the Polytechnic University of Turin, with direct support from the National Geographic Society. Its conclusion was published in May 2018. There is no conclusive evidence of hidden chambers. Reeves did not withdraw his hypothesis. What none of those scanners dispute are the objects inside the tomb itself. There are inscriptions on some gold objects from the funerary offerings that were originally engraved with feminine pronouns and later altered to masculine. There are cartouches with names that were overwritten. And there are, on the walls, scenes of the opening of the mouth ceremony that some researchers interpret as depictions of a pharaoh burying a queen, not the other way around. Something was covered up in that tomb. Exactly what it was is still debated. Where is Nefertiti? There are 3 active possibilities. None have been definitively confirmed. But each one says something different about how he died, and about who decided it. The first, KV21b. The CT scan shows a woman between 30 and 50 years old. The mitochondrial haplogroup is compatible with Tutankhamun, meaning she could have been his mother, his maternal grandmother, or a close female relative. Hawass believes it is Nefertiti. DNA analysis is still pending. The second, the young lady of KV35. In 2003, archaeologist Joanne Fletcher of the University of York identified several physical characteristics specifically documented during the Amarna period: the Nubian-style wig found next to the body, a hairstyle associated with the late nobility of the 18th dynasty, and double earlobe piercings, a practice that Amarna texts and reliefs associate with Nefertiti and her daughters. DNA testing in 2010 ruled out her being Akhenaten's sister, but did not definitively resolve her identity. Stephen Buckley, Fletcher's colleague at the University of York, noted that Hawass attacked the theory with what he called disproportionate and unfair vehemence, and that Fletcher was banned from working in Egypt for years after publishing it. The wound on his face was not caused by grave robbers. Paleoanatomist Ashraf Salim, from Cairo University Hospital, confirmed that the blow was paramotum, it occurred around the time of death. The jaw was shattered. The cheekbone was sunken. The impact was from a blunt object, aimed, with calculated force. The third possibility changes everything. Dr. Aidan Dodson of the University of Bristol, one of the leading experts on the 18th dynasty, has argued that the epigraphic evidence supports a specific reading. There were two people using the throne name Ankaparu in the period after Akhenaten's death. One was a woman, identified as Nefertiti, whom most researchers consider another name for Nefertiti. The other was a different man. If that is correct, then Nefertiti ruled Egypt as a pharaoh in her own right for 1 to 3 years, and her reign was so completely erased that there isn't even a consensus on what her name was when she was in power. She was a pharaoh. She ruled alone. And she was erased from the records with a precision that only a state institution can achieve. And there's something else that almost no channel has mentioned. In the Bagazkoy archives in present-day Turkey, a letter dating from the period immediately following Tutankamon's death is preserved. It was written by a woman identified only as Dakamunzu, a term that in Egyptian could be translated as the king's wife. She writes to the Hittite king Suppiluliuma I, one of the most powerful rulers of the time. She asks him to send one of his sons to marry her. She writes precisely, "I am afraid. I have no son. And I will never take one of my servants for a husband." The Hittite king hesitated. It was an unprecedented request, an Egyptian queen asking a foreign king for a prince. He sent emissaries to verify the letter's authenticity. It was. Then he sent his son Zenanza to Egypt. Zenanza was killed en route. No one claimed responsibility. And the woman who wrote that letter disappears from the records exactly as her mother had disappeared. Most historians believe that Dakamunzu was Enkesenamen, Nefertiti's third daughter. Some researchers point out that the chronology doesn't quite align with that name, suggesting he may have been someone older, someone who had already ruled. This is what changed, specifically. It is no longer possible to say that Nefertiti simply disappeared. The correct way to put it is that she was erased from the record by an institution with the resources, motivation, and access. The priesthood of Ammonius regained control of the Egyptian state through a child pharaoh. That same system that Nefertiti had helped to dismantle was the one that silently and without leaving an official trace signed her historical oblivion. It wasn't time. It was an institutional decision. And in 1912, in the dust of an abandoned workshop in Amarna, Ludwig Borchardt found the only surviving bust of hers intact. Instead of declaring it to the Egyptian authorities at its true value, he undervalued it, hid it for 11 years, and added it to the collection of a German collector who donated it to Berlin. Egypt has been asking for the bust back for decades. Germany continues to refuse. The pattern is identical. Only the actors and the century have changed. Hawass continues excavating. In January 2026, he is in the eastern part of the Valley of the Kings, in an area he himself described as his greatest current hope. He hasn't found the tomb yet. But if he ever does, if KV-21b or any other mummy turns out to be Nefertiti with genetic confirmation, what changes is not just a name on a family tree. What changes is the question that follows: how did she die? Who ordered that no record be kept? And who maintained that silence for 3,200 years? The answer is already partially written, in inscriptions with blank spaces, in Hittite letters without a confirmed recipient, and in a paramotum blow to the jaw of a woman buried without a name. Nefertiti had been erased for 3,000 years when her bust reappeared in 1912 in a workshop in Amarna. And the whole world recognized her immediately, without a name, without a title, without an inscription. Only by her face. That says something about who truly has the power to erase someone, those who control the archives, the museums, the decrees. And it says something about what they cannot completely erase, what already lives on in the collective memory of millions of people. How many other stories like yours are still under a layer of plaster, waiting for someone to do the right scan? If these kinds of mysteries, the ones with a name, a date, and an identifiable antagonist, hold you as much weight as they do for those who investigate them, subscribe and turn on notifications. Because the next story we're about to tell also began with a name erased. And it also has a culprit.